In today's session, let's take a deeper dive into iron metabolism, iron overload, and therapeutic phlebotomy for individuals who have high ferritin and also hemoglobin. This is really important for men of all ages and post-menopausal women. This is something that I see so commonly, unfortunately, on labs that is a reflection of subacute or subclinical elevated or iron overload. And a lot of people don't know what to do about it, but the treatment and the modality is quite simple. It's bloodletting. It's going to your local blood bank, donating blood once or twice a year to bring down that stored iron, because it turns out that iron is a catalyst. Iron, especially elevated levels of iron, we'll talk about the blood biomarkers, the proxies, the things to look out for in your blood work to see if this is elevated in you or someone you know about. But iron can catalyze and help to cause oxidation of low-density lipoproteins within the atherosclerotic plaque. So it's sufficient to say that iron overload and iron excess can drive the process of cardiovascular disease, of cardiovascular dysfunction and the coronary artery occlusion and the narrowing of the arteries. So we have a tool, my friends, that is very affordable, that has been clinically studied, that has been shown in diabetic patients and also in patients with cardiovascular disease to reduce the prevalence of those conditions. So some of the things we'll also talk about today is fatty liver disease and how fatty liver disease can actually be reversed by just donating blood. There's a paper, actually, we're going to talk about it. I'll just give you a little hint at what it's called here. Iron depletion by phlebotomy improves insulin resistance in patients with non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. We know fatty liver disease, unfortunately, is so common. It's not just from eating dietary fat, okay? We know that insulin and hyperinsulinemia causes changes in iron metabolism, iron absorption, and all aspects of iron physiology and ferritin metabolism. So this paper found that in individuals who have a histologically defined non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, that just donating blood over the course of several weeks dramatically improved their blood sugar handling. Now, I want you to pause and say, well, that kind of makes sense, of course, if insulin is involved in iron metabolism and ferritin metabolism. But I want you to ask, when was the last time a doctor told you or someone you know who has insulin resistance, obesity, fatty liver disease to donate blood? They say, no, you need to take this drug, take this medication, we'll see you in 6 weeks. But you never hear about donating blood. But this is so important because it turns out that iron overload, excessive iron, we'll talk about how you can quantify this, looking at your labs, gets stored in the liver, gets stored in the pancreas, gets stored in the heart, and it can even impact the brain. So we have a simple modality. I just donated blood yesterday. You might be able to see this little prick. I don't know if that comes through on the camera, but I donated blood yesterday. I'm on the my cadence is every 6 months because I'm one of these males that tends to have a higher hemoglobin, hematocrit, and ferritin. These, again, are biomarkers we're going to talk about. We talk a lot about this in our blood work masterclass that I will link below so you can better understand all of this. But hemoglobin, hematocrit, and ferritin are things that should be on your radar. Again, if you're a male of any age, or especially if you're a post-menopausal or perimenopausal woman, because it turns out that after menopause, women naturally sort of bloodlet, when they're menstruating. And when that stops, they can accumulate iron. Now, a lot of you might say, well, just go on a vegan diet, go on a vegetarian diet. Well, it turns out that we'll talk about the physiology now, about iron metabolism and how this happens. Senescent red blood cells are at the end of their lifespan. When they die, this is how your body gets iron. And so it's just this turnover. And that process is impacted by hormones, by insulin, by glucose, and things like that. So it's not just dietary heme iron that is part of the problem. This is a natural process that happens in the body when your red blood cells are broken down. About 90% of your daily iron needs, again, to transport oxygen and to do all the oxygen transportation and so forth, part of that iron, your needs come from the breakdown. A huge part of that comes from the breakdown of red blood cells, okay? So a few papers. I know a lot of you like to dive into the details. This will be linked in the show notes. This paper I think was awesome and it's free. The title here is New Insights into the Role of Iron in Inflammation and Atherosclerosis. So again, iron's not necessarily the bad guy, okay? Iron is just the catalyst. Let's just create a small little analogy, okay? Let's say that you're going to cook some hamburgers because Father's Day is around the corner. You're going to cook some hamburgers, right? Imagine if you have the air conditioning on in your house and you leave those hamburgers in the house and your house is like 30 degrees. You could leave those hamburgers on the counter for like hours, right? But if you were to turn the heat on in your house to 100 degrees, like you want it to be really hot, let's just say, right? You want to create a sauna in your house. Those hamburgers would start to rot after 2 hours, right? They would start to break down. Bacteria would grow. You probably would not want to eat them. So the heat there is the catalyst. That's what iron is doing in the pathophysiology of your vessels and the inflammation and the oxidative stress that it creates. It's just a catalyst. So if you have the hormonal metabolic environment, the nutritional environment with a lot of low density lipoproteins that are highly oxidizable because you're eating omega-6 oils in your diet, and you have high iron, right? Because you have iron overload, insulin resistance, and the sort, you're catalyzing the formation of oxidized LDL in your vessels and causing more free radical damage in the body. Okay, so iron is just the catalyst. It's not inherently bad or good. You need iron to transport oxygen in your hemoglobin, right? This is part of how you deliver oxygen to your tissues is iron. So it's not inherently bad. It's when we have supraphysiologic levels of this. We're going to dive into that. So this paper does a great job. So what is iron? Iron is basically just a mineral. These minerals are catalysts, right? It's a redox metal, and it's the main component of hemoglobin that is essential for oxygen transport. Okay, and how it increases, as I mentioned earlier, is the breakdown of red blood cells. Okay, specifically the senescent erythrocytes. So we've talked about how cells, when they get to the end of their lifespan, they undergo cellular senescence, they apoptose and die. The challenge here is the accumulation of senescent cells, for example, within the brain, within the liver, within the heart, that release that senescence-associated secretory phenotype that accelerate aging. So again, this is a beautiful aspect of senescence here with regards to how iron is increased, is this apoptosis and death of these cells, of the red blood cells, okay? And by the way, the nutritional metabolic environment influences that process. The more insulin resistant you are, that process is augmented, is accelerated. And I'll share with you a small story here before we continue on here. Is iron and ferritin are acute phase reactants, okay? And they can increase acutely. And since a lot of people are getting COVID right now, I suspect that I got this new Omicron BA2 variant or whatever about a week and a half ago. I got the classic symptoms. It started as a sore throat, and then it was a little bit of fatigue, and then a little bit of mucusy and phlegm and congestion for a couple of days. That was my experience with it. But after I was, several days, 5-6 days after my last symptom, again, I try to donate blood every 6 months. And so it's June. I'm like, okay, I'm going to go in there and donate blood. Well, when I went to donate blood, one of the first things they do is they check your blood pressure and your heart rate and this, and they also check your hemoglobin, okay? Which, by the way, your hemoglobin can increase if you're dehydrated, but it's an acute phase reactant. It can move around. And my hemoglobin was 19.4, which is it's off the charts. Normally my hemoglobin's like between 15 and 16. And I said to the MA, the phlebotomist, I said, do you think we could redo that? Because she was like, you cannot donate blood today. Your blood's too thick. I thought, gosh, I'm like, it's got to be something else going on, But it just reminded me of the fact that we need to realize that anytime you go to the doctor or get labs, if there's a blip in a marker, you should always retest. And so it also caused me to question and really sort of think about the fact that COVID-19, even the Omicron variant, might actually increase blood viscosity and blood thickness. And this is why this topic is very apropos, even though Omicron is much more mild for some people that potentially are already on the far end, the upper bound side of increased blood viscosity and thickness and blood stagnation. This is even more important for them potentially because of the fact that this particular pathogen seems to affect hemodynamics and blood viscosity and markers and iron metabolism in a way that other pathogens may not. So just understand that. And I think this is why it's so important to talk about this stuff. But hemoglobin is really important to understand that that's an aspect of iron. Now, here's, I think, just a great visual. Here's your blood vessel lumen. And what you're seeing here is the development of atherosclerosis. So this figure really conveys the story. And what you see here is free iron is accelerating the process of the oxidation of the LDL, which is causing the occlusion or the narrowing of the vessel. So when people talk about oxidized LDL, what may be causing that? What's the driver behind that? Excessive iron could be a driver. And so you add in the fact that People are eating a lot of fried foods, the canola oil, the sunflower oil, the cottonseed and soy and whatnot. Their lipoproteins are much more oxidizable. There's some insulin resistance going on, so there's a lot more small, dense LDLs floating around. And then you have iron overload. You have this recipe for developing heart disease. So it's important that we understand this. And again, an easy way in people who have fatty liver disease and iron buildup to improve their insulin sensitivity is to go donate blood. So it turns out that not all insulin resistance is just caused by eating ding-dongs and cupcakes. It could be iron overload as part of it, right? So there's multiple sort of etiologies or ways that we can become insulin resistant. So we need to understand stored iron before we continue on. And so that's what you're going to see here in this visual. A great paper, free. Title here is Ferritin, a family of molecules of iron storage, antioxidants, and more. So what you see here on your labs, and we're going to get to labs soon and interpret a client's labs, actually. A common presentation clinically that I see working with people on a nutritional standpoint, this set of labs. And so that's why it's important that we talk about it. But I want you to understand what ferritin is. Ferritin is stored iron, okay? So iron is found in your hemoglobin, right? You can easily test your hemoglobin and ferritin. So what ferritin is you can see here, it's just a bunch of amino acids. And in the middle of that is two iron molecules. And so you see here histidine, you see glutamine, you see these glutamine chains, and they're creating this sort of three-dimensional structure, and iron's in the middle. And so ferritin is important to measure. You wouldn't believe how many clients I've worked with over the years that have been to like the best doctor in town, and they didn't even look at their ferritin for some reason. It's like, what are you doing? You have to look at ferritin. You can't just look at hemoglobin. You need to understand this. And just a small plug for our blood work masterclass. We talk all about this, do exactly what to look for, the markers, the ranges, the tests. It's a really good $69 investment for you. So you can go to your doctor and say, hey, look, this is what I want. This is why I want it. And when you go with that confidence, they'll say, hey, yeah, sure, we'll add it on. That's normally not what we run, but we'll do it for you. Okay. So understand that. Now we're going to continue on and dive into these labs. But as always, friends, I just want to welcome you all back. Thank you for being here. If you're getting value out of this video, you can do a few things that will really help other people like you. Hit that like button, leave a comment below, and just share this directly as a text message to a friend or family member who they're struggling with cardiovascular risk factors or diabetes. They need to be aware of the power of blood donation and understanding their iron status. This is probably a pandemic. I mean, if you look at how many people have iron overload and don't know it, and the fix is so simple. So we're going to continue with that. Also, friends, exercise, very important to help iron metabolism, to help with your cardiovascular system. One of the tools that we have you to make your workouts even better is the new electrolyte sticks that have creatine, that have real salt, that have magnesium, taurine, electrolytes. These are super easy for you to take right before your workout or in your workout to have a better exercise session. There's now over 180 5-star reviews on the website, myoscience.com. Check them out. 30-day money-back guarantee. You can try these before your workout. You can read some of the reviews and see what other people are saying about these. People are loving them, and I would like you to give them a try because exercise is medicine, my friends. So use the coupon code podcast over at myoscience.com. That's myoscience.com. Okay, so we are going to continue on and talk about some labs. It's so fun when we can review labs. And if you're listening in iTunes, again, you might want to check out the video version of this. And so this is a 38-year-old male who had reached out to me. He's like, gosh, I'm doing everything right, makes great money, has a great business and stuff. He's just like, I'm feeling a little off. And a friend of his was unfortunately diagnosed with cancer. And so he's like, look, really motivated. I love when people are motivated to make some changes. It's like, first, hey, look, before we start looking at all these things, let's just get a baseline. So I ran the labs that I like to recommend for my clients, which is a Chem 24 with a CBC and differential, iron, testosterone, all the hormones and all that. And everything was actually really good, except for these markers that you're going to see here. What you see here is his iron is sort of mid-range of the lab, but his ferritin is on the higher end than I like to see, which is 218. But it's not just the ferritin, it's his hemoglobin and hematocrit are high as well. So what this means is he has a lot of free iron floating around, okay? As a 38-year-old, you're like, no big deal, free iron, you're active, it doesn't matter. But I know that his diet needs some work, okay? So if he's cranking and slugging down those canola oils and sunflower oils and soy oil and eating fried foods, going out a lot, okay, he's setting himself up to develop early onset dementia, cancer, probably heart disease. So when we saw these, again, Here's the numbers. His hemoglobin was 16.4. If that was in isolation, 16.4, it's right in the mid-range of the lab. Not a big deal. However, his hematocrit was 49.3. Now, if you're racing in the Tour de France, you want your hematocrit to be 49.3. You want it to be as close to 50 as possible. But he's not racing in the Tour de France, okay? In fact, he barely does any cardio, besides a little basketball. So I want that down, okay? Because we can reduce the probability of developing on a cellular level heart disease with not compromising his athletic performance. So if his ferritin gets down to 42 or 43, he's not even going to notice it. He's still going to have the same recovery, but he's most likely not going to cause the roots to develop the cardiovascular disease, the atherosclerosis, and that, right? Because his liver enzymes are starting to increase as well. So moderately high ferritin, high hemoglobin, a high-ish, above the midline of the lab, and then his hematocrit close to 50%, okay? Now look, this is actually good. I've seen men in their 50s where this is hemoglobin's 19, hematocrit's 55, ferritin's 350. I've seen it way worse, okay? But as someone who wants to have a high functioning brain throughout his career, he's got a child, he's got to, financially, prepare for that child's life in college, and he's got a lot on his plate. So what I told him is, let's start out donating blood once every 6 months, and then we'll rerun these labs. Everything looks really good, okay? And he's like, yeah, that sounds good. Anyway, I kind of feel a little sluggish and stuff. And, there's some science to support that. So let's get into some of the research here about that and talk about why, I know it sounds crude, why bloodletting is a tool that can help with blood sugar regulation, because it turns out that this is a bidirectional system. So poor insulin health and blood sugar health worsen iron dynamics, and iron dynamics, i.e. iron overload, worsen blood sugar control. So it's a bidirectional system. And so this is why, if you're trying to optimize metabolic health, support metabolic health, drive down that hemoglobin A1C, improve your glycemic variability, not get fatty liver disease and all of the thing, well, then you should consider your iron metabolism as well. So this was a study. As I mentioned, I've already kind of hinted at that we're going to talk about this. I believe this was published in 2007, okay? Iron depletion by phlebotomy improves insulin resistance in patients with NAFLD, which is non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, and hyperferritinemia. So what this study found is every 15 days, they had individuals who had, ultrasound, diagnosed fatty liver disease. They donated 350 milliliters of blood. And they noticed, obviously, improvements in ferritin and hemoglobin. But what was sort of unexpected was changes in liver enzymes and markers of insulin sensitivity. So there's a few tables here. I don't want to go into all of the details, but let me just sort of share with you the improvements. And I think what we don't recognize, as a community, is the importance of liver as a factor improving metabolic health. Your liver is the organ that is regulating glucose metabolism, glycogen resynthesis. And your liver is so important for overall metabolic health. And it also happens to be the organ where, if you have elevated levels of iron, that gets stored and damages your liver. So it's hard to have good blood sugar control and dynamics if your liver's loaded with iron. And so that's where phlebotomy and donating blood, if we just pause here, think about, it's good for you, but it's also good for someone else who has surgery, or they're in a traumatic event where they get shot and they're in a car accident or something like that. You could help save their life, because there is a shortage of people. A lot of people are scared of COVID, so they're not donating blood. They think they're going to get COVID if they go and donate blood. So you should be donating blood anyway, right? It's just good measure. If you're not anemic, right? Especially if you're a male and you're a post-menopausal woman, you should be donating blood. Now, if you're already anemic, if you're already always cold and tired, and you've had an issue, maybe an eating disorder in the past, blood donation is probably not a good idea for you, especially if you're a menstruating female or trying to get pregnant, right? But for those of us that are not in those categories, we should take one for the team and donate, okay? So they go on to say that because the degree of hepatic insulin resistance and hyperinsulinemia is associated with cardiovascular damage and liver disease, these results suggest that iron depletion by phlebotomy could favorably influence a natural history of patients with NAFLD. Okay, NAFLD, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, very common. there's going to be a shortage of livers because people literally, their livers are being eroded by their diet and their lifestyle. So we could help a lot of people by just helping them donate blood. This is key. But the improvements in the HOMA-IR and various scores were quite profound here. Statistically significant in these groups. We're talking like, it was like a 15-point swing in the group that was tracked that didn't donate blood over the course of the study versus a group that did. And each arm had 46 some odd participants in that. So really impressive, I think, because again, the HOMA-IR is a way to look at overall insulin sensitivity, and that dramatically improved by just donating blood. Now, let's talk more about heart disease and blood donation. And I'll just share with you two studies, and we don't need to break them down and look at all the nuances here. But this one, I think this was in the BMJ. I'll link it below here. The title here is Cardiovascular Risk in 159,934 Frequent Blood Donators While Addressing the Healthy Donor Effect. So this is the problem with some of these studies, is looking at, okay, what is the outcome or the upper bound benefit of donating blood with regards to reducing cardiovascular risk? Is you have this healthy donor effect where if you're a type of person that's going to donate blood, you're also probably the type of person that may eat good foods and may exercise. So is there confounding variables? Well, they did these Dutch scientists did some analysis here that statisticians can do to sort of control for that. And what they found is that, in fact, on the long term, over the course of years, we're talking high frequency blood donation is protective against cardiovascular disease. So we have outcome data now that's being looked at. So we need to keep that in mind, that this is a tool. And look, I'll tell you, there's a lot of pre-screening questionnaires that you have to go through. It's kind of annoying. It's like 42 questions. Have you lived in Ireland during this year because of like prion proteins? And have you had unprotected sex recently? Blah, blah, blah. There's all that stuff. But then once you get in there and get through that pre-screening stuff, it's 5 minutes. Like you donate your blood, you're in and out. I mean, okay, the whole process is 30 minutes twice a year. Okay. So we're not talking about going, when you talk about exercise, that's much more commitment, right? Oh, you got to go to the gym 3 to 5 days a week. You're like, oh, that's a lot. We're talking 30 to 40 minutes twice a year. Okay. That can help other people and help you, and has all these benefits, which I think is really great. Now, there's another study, and again, this one was conducted in this was 2001, blood donation and risk of coronary artery disease in men. So this was just in men, but what they found is there was some benefit with regards to relative risk reduction in the incidence of having a myocardial infarction or a heart attack. Okay, so people who donated blood, they were shown to have a reduced frequency, and there was a reduced relative risk of having a heart attack. Okay. So we can go on. I mean, there's several other studies, but these were the ones that I thought were some of the better pieces of data. And I'll just say it just helps you feel better. I think there's part of the donating blood is you're helping other people, which is good. And then also, that your body is a vehicle to make good blood that might help someone else. So it causes you subtly to make better choices. I know that sounds weird, but even leading up in the last month, I was like, oh, I'm donating blood. So I want to make sure that I'm eating good. I want to make sure that I'm recovering. I want to make sure that the blood that I'm going to give to someone else is like good, And so there's some of that too. So I think, all these little things that we can do, little tricks that we can play with our mind to not succumb to the fast food and the alcohol and all the temptations that are part of, unfortunately, our society now, help. And so if you can use these little tricks to cause yourself to be healthier so you can help someone else better, I think you might as well take advantage of that. So a lot of benefits here, friends. I wanted to share this with you, especially for people who are seemingly doing everything right to improve their blood sugar health and their metabolic health and reduce the risk factors for heart disease, especially in this COVID-19 environment where the virus has been shown to augment hemodynamics and blood coagulation pathways. It's important, and if this is a tool that can make blood less viscous and thick and, all that, I think this is just something that we should be sharing. So, who would have known that bloodletting, a very primitive, rudimentary medical sort of strategy, is making a resurgence and has benefits. It's crazy, right? So I'm not saying it's a cure-all for everything. I'm just saying in a subset of people, particularly men, middle-aged, elderly men, and post-menopausal women, this can be a tool. Run your hemoglobin, run your hematocrit, run your your red blood cells. And yeah, check that out. So check out your ferritin as well. And if you have any additional questions, I would love to know in the comments below. What do you think of this video? Hit that like button if you enjoyed it. Thanks for sharing, and we'll catch you on a future one down the road. Bye now.